Landis Technologies. Today I'm going to give you a look at Landis Contact Center for Microsoft Teams. We'll go through the whole product. We'll start by looking at the architecture and how it fits into your Teams environment. And then from there, we'll take a look at the actual product, the agent and what the agent's experience looks like, the look and feel, and of course the manager reports and even some admin pieces. So let's dig in. So just as we get started here, just a little bit on Landis Technologies. We are a gold certified partner of Microsoft's. We have a long, deep relationship with them, and we really focus on designing solutions that help complete Microsoft environments. So some of the areas that Teams maybe has some gaps, and Contact Center is obviously one of them. Also call recording, attendant consoles, those types of things are our area of specialty. So we have a wide network of partners globally and deploy our products all across the world. So as we talk specifically about Contact Center, a few things to consider that you'll notice as we go through this. Just a few central design points for us and things that hopefully you notice in the product. First and foremost, simplicity. We want the product to be simple to set up, purchase, deploy, and of course operate. Contact center projects are typically not thought of as simple. Usually they're quite involved, expensive, time consuming, and we really want to simplify the whole process. So simplicity is a huge drive for us. The other thing you'll notice is a very familiar look and feel. We want this to blend in with the Teams experience completely. And really we say our goal is that end users can operate our product without even realizing it. That's how integrated we want it to be into Teams. Helps overcome learning curve, resistance to change, and just something that is easy to roll out to your users. We'll take a look, walk you through some of the features that we cover, but overall the product covers a pretty powerful and wide range of features, and it covers all the common contact center requests, your analytics, reporting, queuing, listen in, barge in, those types of things are all covered, and we'll take a look at that list in higher detail. It's also open platform. It's built into Microsoft so that it can utilize the Microsoft tools such as Power BI, Power Automate, the whole Power Platform to complete tasks and to integrate with systems that you may already have in place. Pulling information in from a CRM or generating highly custom reports through Power BI. It really opens up a lot of possibilities for fitting this into your environment. And lastly, one thing to consider as we look at this is built on a trusted Teams platform. We're using Teams calling. There's no tricky call routing with this. Everything stays within your environment. It's a cloud-hosted solution that sits in Azure and just plugs into your Teams environment and just delivers those features that you're missing. So that's just kind of a summary of some of our focus points. Now to talk just a little bit more specifically on the architecture, and if you've researched contact centers, you're familiar with Microsoft's terminology that they use with the Power, Extend, Connected Solutions. Landis is fully on the Power, Extend side of things, meaning we're using Microsoft's own APIs to deliver all of this functionality right inside of your Teams environment. As opposed to the other term they'll use is Connected Solutions. Connected Solutions tend to sit a little bit more outside of the environment and rely on various routing methods, typically direct routing, to send traffic through some external service or server somewhere, add the functionality, and then send it back to Teams. Obviously, there's a few more links in the chain with this type of setup here. It's just not quite as streamlined. And so keeping things on the Power Extend side of the architecture allows us to make it easy to integrate, easier to manage, and just a better experience overall. And just to help you visualize how this sits within your environment, think of this right here as your Teams environment. Right within that, Landis has this resource account, and it's just like a standard resource account that you'd be familiar with a Teams client or a Teams call queue. So as calls come in, and it doesn't matter what source they're coming from. It could be PSTN calling, direct routing, Microsoft calling plans. Doesn't matter to us how those calls are coming into your Teams environment. They come in, they're simply pointed towards that resource account. The resource account communicates with the contact center services here in Azure using instantaneous secure signaling. And that will in turn tell the APIs what to do according to the settings you have in place for your own organization. Playing the right welcome message, the menu prompts, sending it to the right queue, timing out to the right agents, all while it's reporting on all the activity, how long the caller waited, who answered, how long they spoke, all of those metrics that you'll want to report. So the key thing to consider here, calls come into your team's environment and they go straight to your agents. There's no routing of the traffic through the Landis side at any point. It's just that signaling that is generating the reports and sending the activity that is going back and forth between the resource account and Azure. And then the last piece is the audio recording. If you have audio recording turned on, those files are obviously recorded and the recordings are saved in Azure as well. This example that you see here shows those recordings saving to the Landis Azure. However, as you're setting up your contact center, you can easily set those recordings to save to your own Azure storage blob, in which case even the audio recording files would be fully on your control and not saved to Landis. So really simple architecture. And what this means for deploying in your environment is creating a new contact center organization, which you can do that from a link that we send you. It takes you a few minutes, very straightforward. And then setting up this resource account and assigning it in teams. We have detailed instructions that go along with it, and we have live support that can help if you run into any snags, but very quick to set this up and deploy. And in fact, within an hour, you can easily have your contact center up and running with calls coming in. And then from there, it's just a matter of setting up how many queues you want, adding your users, and so on. So we can talk a little bit more about admin experience a little bit later. So let's start by taking a look at the agent's experience and some of the tools that an agent will have at their disposal. So first of all, as we mentioned, very integrated into Microsoft Teams. In fact, you'll see the Teams application that is running within the Teams client. There's no Landis branding or anything. As you can see here, it's going to feel to your end users like they are simply using functionality that Teams is delivering. Their home dashboard here just has some general information, inbound, outbound, their call ranking, how many calls they've taken, and so on. And then they have an agent panel that will show them that will display their calls as they receive them. Before I move into that, one item to consider, because this is so integrated into the Teams application, they can access this wherever they're at. Work from home, remote, changing PCs. All they need to do is sign into Teams on any device, and they can sign into the contact center and start taking calls. So as they open their agent panel, they'll see an area where their calls will be displayed. This can sit inside of Teams as you see it here, or it can be popped out to a separate window for multitasking if they prefer that. Within their agent panel, they can easily sign in and out of the appropriate call queues, as well as put themselves on break or available or any other custom status that you may give them to pick from. It could be paperwork, it could be lunchtime, whatever custom statuses you put in there. They can select those as reasons for being unavailable, and then of course you can report on that later. So as I'm signed in and ready to take calls, I will now see the calls showing up in the contact center agent panel. I see which queue it's from, I see the phone number, the caller ID, and I of course can accept that call, and I am then connected to that caller. Right here within the agent panel, we see the basic call controls on the left-hand side. But the right-hand side of the screen is showing CRM integration. The view you're looking at here is showing Dynamics 365 integration. We also have connectors for Power App or for Salesforce and ServiceNow. But one thing to consider, this is basically a canvas that is displaying Power Apps information. So even if you don't have one of those common CRMs, as long as Power Apps can tie into whatever database you do have, that information can be retrieved and displayed here in the window for the agent. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of possibilities with this to pull in that information that is helpful to agents as they're taking those calls. You also notice a recording button right here. This recording button can be used, so as you have recording enabled, you can change the policy assigned to your agents. It could be on demand, it could be start and stop if they need to take a credit card number or something like that, and they can control that if you give them permission to right here within their agent panel as well. As the agent finishes the phone call, you can present them with some wrap-up questions. How did the call go? What were they calling about? What product, what service? Were they satisfied with your answers? Any series of questions that you want to ask your agents as they're completing the phone call. It also gives them a moment to pause, make sure all their data entry is completed before they put themselves back in the queue and are available for the next incoming call. And as you can see here, you can also assign a wrap-up timer so that it automatically puts them back in the queue. So as I finish my wrap-up questions, it takes me back to a blank agent panel, and I'm available for the next incoming call. So very streamlined, very straightforward experience that you can see there. All right, so now let's consider some of the manager tools that a manager will have at their disposal. And to do this, I'm actually going to just kind of switch over and show you more of a live component here. I'm going to pull up my own contact center that you'll see here on your screen. So obviously now as a manager, I have a lot more menus and options to pick from, more reports to look at, just more tools. It's inside of the same app, but everything is permissions driven. So you can easily assign permissions to any individual in your environment so that they have the right tools to answer calls or look at reports or any other range of settings that you want to make available to them. So if you have an agent that you want to give them permission to see only certain reports, you can do that. Or maybe a manager that can see full reporting but only for this one location or team and not for this other team that they don't manage. So that's just a few examples, but you can get very granular with the permissions that you grant in the contact center. All right, so taking a look at the live call management. So this is one area that that managers will typically be able to manage is the live call screen and being able to see calls that are currently in progress. And I'll just trigger a call so you can see it showing up on the queue there. Should see a call coming in there momentarily. So this is where managers would see all the calls that are currently in progress. They could see who it's speaking to, who's connected, and so on. They can expand and see more in-depth information about the call, as well as barge in if they wanted to join the call and take a look. One other thing that I want to show you as a live tool is the ability to see sentiment. So within this live call screen, we're going to expand this call that's in progress. And I can see detailed information on this call as well as sentiment analysis. And so what we're doing here is using Microsoft Cognitive Services to transcribe the call and give the manager a transcription for what's happening in that call, but also give it a score every few seconds so the manager can see how the call is progressing. Is it a negative call? Is it a positive one? So we can hover our cursor over these sentiment blocks and see the scores that are feeding into that. But then we can also see an average sentiment score up here that shows conversation-wide, on average, it seems to be looking pretty positive. Now, of course, if the manager wanted to, they could click on the barge icon and they could join in and listen to audio and also contribute if they needed to. But average sentiment score is just another way that you can observe calls in progress and see if there's any that are not going well that you need to direct your attention toward. Another live management screen is the queue status, where we can see a breakdown of all the call queues that we manage and how many calls are waiting within that call queue, how many agents are signed in. We can easily sign people in if we needed to. If that queue needed more help, we can just easily add more users to the queue. And right here as well, we can see a full list of the calls that are in the queue. So it's another way where you can see the live call screen. Wallboard show a live look at everything that's happening within the contact center. So how many agents are signed in, how many calls are waiting. Here we see our longest waiting queue is getting quite lengthy. And so we can just kind of take a look and see how many callers or how many agents are on the phone, how many are connected. You can set your service level and see what percentage of calls are meeting service level, as well as just some average handle times, abandoned calls, and so forth. But just a nice, simple wallboard that displays all the necessary information for what's happening in the contact center right now. So then let's just briefly take a look at some of the live reports that you have as a manager, or some of the historic reports that you have as a manager to take a look at and see the reports for your managers and call volumes and so on. So Call queue summary just shows an overall view of your queues and what the activity has been like, how many calls they've taken, the types of calls they've taken, answered versus unanswered, just a general sense, and you can set your date period. You'll notice as we go through these reports, they all have an Excel button that you can easily throw information over to Excel and create your own charts or modify or delete data if you needed to. And obviously we have Power BI tie-ins that you can create your own custom reports if needed. So summary of the call queues, there's also agent summaries that show you an overall look at what your agents have been up to. Who's been taking a lot of calls, who's busy, who's not busy, who's been missing a lot of calls, just a lot of common metrics that it captures. We notice the average sentiment score. It also ranks your agent by their average sentiment score as well. So you can see which agents perform the best with their sentiment and which agents are lacking a little bit. You also notice the ease of configuration for these reports. You can easily turn on or off certain columns just to drill down and get the information that you're interested in. And of course, setting your date period and filtering by agents or by business unit or whatever you wanted to do there. So a lot of possibilities on the filtering side. All right, just a few other reports. I didn't mention the IVR. We didn't talk about the IVR much yet, but Landis does have its own IVR built into the product. It's a replacement for Teams Auto Attendant. You can use Teams Auto Attendant if you prefer to, or if you just had basic needs that takes care of. Teams Auto Attendant can forward to a Landis queue. However, we do have our own IVR that offers some upgraded functionality and reporting. So it can do things like transferring, doing a data dip into your CRM and transferring a call based on a certain indicator. It can read information back to the caller, so they have some detail to go on. And of course, then it gives you some more reporting, how long on average people are spending in the IVR and things like that. And you can also see detailed lists of each call that came through the IVR, where they ended up getting sent to, and so on. All right, you can also look at queue summary that shows a breakdown of, or queue detail rather, that shows a breakdown of all the calls that came through the queue, so you can easily see what queue they came to, where, who handled them. So if you needed to search a phone number and see specific information for a call, you can easily just search the queue details and it shows a full call log of all activity through the contact center. Call recordings, pretty straightforward. You can easily access recordings, calls that were recorded. You can play them back, you can download them, share them, but just a nice portal to easily access your call recordings. There's also an abandoned calls report that shows a list of calls that hung up in queue without being connected to an agent. Another feature of a Landis queue is the ability to hang up and request a callback. So if I don't want to wait on hold, I can hang up and have an agent call me back when they're available, which is a common feature in contact centers, and typically, callers appreciate not having to wait on the line. So if a caller does hang up and request a callback, we can see that here on the report. An agent can return that call and mark it as completed, and the rest of the agents know that that call has been taken care of. Just a few other reports. Call queues by hour allows us to see what time of day call volume is highest and lowest. What time of day do we see the most missed calls or abandoned calls? Just a nice report that helps us get our staffing in order. Agent timeline. We can look at a certain agent and see how they spend their day, how much time in break or in various other states that they may select, and overlaid how much time they are spending in calls. And then lastly, the wrap-up answers that agents are completing as they finish a call. Those come to a report so that the manager can see all the answers that are given there. So just to touch, that's just kind of an overview on some of the reports. Very configurable, a lot of customization that you can do if you need to, but everything is right out of box, ready to go to pull all these metrics. I'll just touch briefly on the admin side of things. We're not going to go too deep into the admin side, but I just want to point out that the contact center is very easy to manage. Whether it's adjusting your call queues and managing the activity, setting the wrap-up questions, what type of ring method do we want? Do we want serial, parallel? Do we want skills-based routing, round robin, longest idle, making those selections? Easily changing welcome messages and hold music. We can even use Microsoft's text to voice to type in a new IVR or welcome message and have it play into the queue. Adding the correct members of the queue, adding the business hour sets and things like that. Very easy to manage your users as well, making sure that everyone has the right permissions and the right roles assigned to them. You can rank them on skills-based routing too, so that as calls come in, it follows the right skill set. And then just basic things like configuring your Wrapup Questions, your Wallboards, and so on. So I'm not going to go too deep into that. You're welcome to set up your own test contact center free of charge, play around with it, and start testing this out in your own environment. Start taking calls and get a feel for the operation. And if you have any questions on setup, we can certainly help you with that. But you have free access to a 1-month trial, and then we can go from there and talk about your organization needs and get you specific pricing and so on. So just to jump back here, just to summarize the list of the features that the contact center includes, you'll notice a lot of the functionality in the contact center being more voice focused. At the moment, we are addressing the functionality around voice and calling in the contact center. However, keep an eye open. We do have multi-channel on our roadmap and coming soon. So that's something that we are building towards. So if you have a requirement or an interest in things like web chat and email management, those features will be added to the contact center as we go along here. So more to come on that. I just want to finish by talking briefly about the licensing. There's 3 distinct components to the contact center that you may want to consider. So there's contact center, which is what we've been discussing, your call queuing, IVR, reporting, analytics, and so on. There's also the policy recording tool. So it's easy enough to turn on call recording for any contact center user, but you can easily deploy call recording to any Teams user in your environment. So this does not have to be simply inside the contact center. You can deploy call recording as its own solution if that's all you have a need for. And then lastly, the attendant console. We're not going to talk about that today. This is a product that is coming soon from Landis. We are waiting on a few final APIs from Microsoft, but the Landis attendant console for Microsoft Teams will be more geared towards your reception users, those users that are answering and transferring calls, messaging contacts, setting calendar meetings, and so on. Just a little bit more of an administrative role, and the attendant console will take care of those users. So just lastly, to talk on a little bit of pricing, we try to keep things very straightforward, not just with the architecture and the product itself, but also the pricing and licensing. So I'll put some prices there on the screen. It simply comes down to a monthly subscription per user. $75 a month for a contact center license. There's no upfront fees for deployment. That includes setup, that includes support. We don't require any contract, so you can pay month to month, and you can add and remove licenses seasonally if needed. So makes it very flexible. You also notice call recording at $5, so you can easily add a call recording license to any contact center user if you wanted to record their phone calls, and $15 to deploy it to a user that is only using call recording. And then again, more to come on the attendant console, but we're expecting that at $95 per month for that product. So yeah, this just kind of gives you an overview. These are your total costs. There's no other hidden fees within it. All the functionality, all the features that we showed you are included within that. And it's something that, it's easy to set it up, start testing, and then when you feel comfortable with it, you can fully deploy it, and you're all set to go. So there's not a lot of complexity there. That's all we're going to cover in today's demo. Please feel free to reach out to us with more questions. We're happy to answer any questions you have, help you get set up with your own test tenant, so that you can get a feel for it, and then we can also generate a specific quote for your environment. Something to consider, some of the pricing we gave there may depend on the amount of users you have, so larger contact centers will price out specifically for you. So thank you for taking the time to take a look at the product. Please let us know if there's any questions we can answer for you. Obviously, our contact information is here on the website, but you can reach out to us directly at our email address, sales@landistechnologies.com. Thanks for watching. Take care.